দেড় মাস কিনার পরে জমিনটা কিনছি, 1.5 মাস ছিলাম, বুঝছেন? মাটি কাটটা 1.5 মাস রয়েছি, 1.5 মাস পরে আবার হিয়া ভাঙ্গিয়া যেতে কোন কই থাম। আগে তো 6 ভাঙ্গা দিছি, এরপরে আবার যে ওই জায়গায় রয়েছি, রওয়ার পরে আমি কই থাকুম, তারপরে দেয় বেরি ডালেছিলাম, বেরি ভাঙ্গার পরে তারপরে আইসি এই ঢাকা। বেরির দ্বারা ভেঙে গেছে, তার তো কোনো আর কোনো ইয়া নাই, তারপরে এই ঢাকা আইসি।
তখন আর কিছুই নেই।
Deeply distressing, but I was really appreciative of how open and honest these individuals who are affected by this flooding were in sharing their struggles and getting to see the absolute devastation and uncertainty, the hopelessness, the loss of lives, of homes, of industries, of trajectory and goals in life due to this. It is a complete and utter devastation. And while I and my family don't see this direct effect of global warming with these rising sea levels in our daily life, we should still never stand for other human beings being subjected to this treatment. And I just thought this was a really well curated, on the ground, brave filmmaking, brave sharing from the subjects, and a really important view.
You get a look at the really harsh and stark realities of climate change and climate crisis and the debilitating effects that it has on people in different parts of the world. You know, for us here in North America, we're like, oh, you know, it's really hot this summer, or you know, there's like little changes that don't greatly affect us. But on the other side of the world, it is insurmountable. I mean, there's tsunamis, there's flooding, there are all of these things that are displacing people from their homes, that are preventing them from being able to rebuild because there is no money, and there's not enough money to send kids to go get their education, and even if they do have their education, they need to work. So it's just kind of this cycle that keeps on happening, and we really get to see the faces behind climate crisis and who it affects. And I just think this is a really big eye-opening film of the reality of the world right now and the state that it's in. And I just don't think that there's enough attention given to developing countries in general. This is something that we don't hear on the news. People don't talk about it. And so there are like millions and millions and millions of people that are struggling and losing their homes and trying to rebuild and having to relocate against their will in order to just survive and make it. So I think that documentaries like this are really important to help keep the conversation going, educate people.
We hear about how climate change is going to affect us in the future, but we don't really see it happening in our life. And I thought this film was very important to show how climate change is seriously affecting people's lives right now in this day and age in India. The impact of the river erosion and the flooding on crops and livelihoods, and how 90 million people there are at risk of these things. I appreciated how this documentary the stories were told entirely by the people and the subjects of the documentary. We heard all of their accounts of the flooding and the impact on their lives and the situation all came from them. There was no expert voiceover talking over them. It was all, heard entirely from them. And we had a few statistics on screen as text, but other than that, the voices were of the people who were affected by this climate change disaster. So yeah, I appreciated that aspect. I appreciated the fact that this brought awareness to climate change in a very real and right now way.
I really liked how they kind of presented everything because it wasn't really like directed or narrated by anybody. It was driven completely by stories of the locals and how they were being affected and the footage that you were seeing. And that was the entire thing that kind of propelled the whole story forward. So it wasn't from like a narrator's point of view or the cameraman's point of view, really. And, you know, having that kind of voice throughout the entire thing, it really let you focus on all of these different voices, all of these different stories, all of these different instances where they're being affected by climate change, and not just climate change as our oceans are rising, which obviously is part of it, but also by the, you know, like the seasons being less predictable, the, you know, the rainy season, the dry season, and how that's affecting crops, how that's affecting everybody. Show in a real way, like not just a conceptual, like, oh, the oceans are rising, or oh, you know, climate change is affecting crops and seasons and things like that. Like, these were real people with real stories that really had their lives uprooted, that really lost all their possessions, that really had, you know, this like this massive it's had this massive impact on their lives.
To put so much work into working on building these barriers that barely even help is, to me, I mean, it shows the character of these people, the persistence. Their loss is unbelievable and unbearable. Just like the woman talking about her husband leaving because he's taken out a loan and afraid he can't pay back, and it's going to be dangerous for him and his family, and so he left. I mean, that's heartbreaking. You know, she puts on a strong face, but I can imagine how that would feel. It's like you're watching a movie and it's not really happening, but these people are really going through this, and just a terrible situation. And another reason why this climate change is so crazy.
About what's the impact of rising sea levels in the world. And it does a really great job of showing the impact on actual people's lives, and capturing their stories of losing generational homes and adapting to different living situations, and even the impacts on rising sea levels, not just on their physical homes, but also how society sees them, the kind of jobs that they're able to have, their migration throughout the country. It's a really, really interesting documentary, and it shows a lot about the issue in a really humane way.